All right, here we go. It's 2025. It's time for a brand new episode of Connect This. We're going to be launching with some fun people today. We're doing some great predictions, and we're going to have our customary beginning of the year check-in at CES with our correspondent coming to us from a Cybertruck in a few minutes. But as we get started, I'm Chris Mitchell at the Institute for Local Self-Reliance. We've got Kim McKinley, who is maybe Karen today, coming to us from Tech.
Who invited Karen? And if you see somebody else on the screen who is not usual, I'm just going to say they might be Karen. But moving on.
Yeah, so we'll see if anyone talks to the manager today. We've got Travis Carter coming in from USI Fiber. We got some light snow coming down, but Travis, you been digging in the ground at all with the lack of snow cover?
Yeah, it hasn't been actually too bad the last few weeks. We'll see. Are we going to get more?
Just a little bit, I think. Maybe is there good ice skating off your dock? Can I come over and hang out?
Yeah, you want to come on? You want to come over and do your ballerina on the ice or whatever you do?
Yeah, I'll fall down in front of you. I don't mind.
Perfect.
We got Doug Dawson coming to us from CCG Consulting down in Asheville. Doug, no longer the site of the most recent horrific disaster in the United States. Welcome.
Now we're old news now, but I am a little worried because you said we had to make great predictions, so now I'm a little scared. So yeah.
No, I said 8 predictions, and then probably was autocorrect. Yeah,
8 works. 8 works. Okay.
And we have Bob Knight coming to us once again from Harry. Bob's able to join us for the first half of the show. Welcome.
Well, I don't feel so welcome after seeing Kim's shirt. And it said, what does your shirt say, Kim?
Who invited Karen?
Best Karen ever.
Bob's got the best Karen ever shirt. Once again, we see some coordination. If you see these two on a Delta flight, you might want to wait for the next one. Just get off the plane, and they're often coordinated.
You say that, but Roger's in a Cybertruck in Vegas, not the Cybertruck, so you have to watch out for that one too.
Right, we're going to bring Roger in. Let's bring Roger in. We're going to dive into CES. So the Consumer Electronics Show, Roger runs Utopia Fiber and used to have the misfortune of working with Kim, but finally that dark chapter of his life is over. Welcome, Roger.
Thanks for having me on the show, Chris. It's always a pleasure. But yeah, I'm trying to get out of town and get back home. But I've been here for CES, and it's been a great show. But
yeah, last year you talked about a number of things. One that I recall, we talked a bit about more products having more than 1 gigabit per second connectivity. What are some of did you pick up on any trends this year?
yeah, we saw a lot of that. In the past, I was always like, oh, there's a 10 gig port and here's a 10 gig port. And, we're going to have all these 10 gig wired networks in our homes. But I think what we're seeing more of, which makes a lot more practical sense, is Wi-Fi 7. So pretty much every line of laptop, they're like, yeah, we're going to be having these coming out with Wi-Fi 7. Those, like TrendNet has a Wi-Fi 7 router. They're able to push, it's a quad band router that does 22 gigabits. And you're just like,
okay,
this
but
is getting crazy.
So one of the things I like about you, Roger, is that you're not just a pretty face at the head of an organization. You're an engineer type. You think about numbers. I always see these numbers and like, is that actually per device or is that max throughput if you have 10 devices?
We need to stop this for a hot second. A pretty face. Okay.
Utopia was clearly the most attractive workplace in America for years running, and now has to make do with half of its steam gone. So, but Roger, like, are we seeing actual like one device on that? Will it get a very high connection, or is that number like 10 simultaneous devices having a pretty decent connection?
Yeah, you make a really good point, right? The router manufacturers are not telling you a speed that's like, here's what you're going to see on a speed test, right? That's not what that is. What that means is I've got this spectrum over here with clients on it, and I've got this other band, and I've got this other band over here. And if you happen to have a whole bunch of devices on every single band that it has all running at the same time in aggregate, that's the full capacity of the system. You know, it's kind of like Elon Musk is talking about Starlink, of saying how much capacity Starlink has. And you're like, no, actually it has very little capacity per satellite, but he likes to talk about the capacity of the whole system, you know, 95% of which is sitting over water, actually maybe more than that, right? So it's a little bit of that game they play with the capacity. But if you think about how many devices we're seeing in homes, as every TV and gaming system and the smart home systems and all that stuff, more and more stuff's getting connected. They're all kind of on different spectrums depending on the needs, whether they're further away or high capacity, whatever it may be. There's benefit though, right? If you have all these different bands that different devices are connecting to and not messing with each other, that's awesome. I think we're going to actually need that with some of the newer stuff, because if you get into the really high-end VR stuff, nobody wants that plugged in. You're going to want to push all your normal, less critical devices onto other bands so you can really suck the bandwidth with the things that need it. So there is value.
I was wondering if we want to take a break and let Travis ask us if we know where the spectrum that is available on the 6 gigahertz came from.
So I was trying to figure out how there was so much capacity there. And Roger, when you say tri-band, what is that third band?
That's
Would that be 6 gigahertz?
Yep.
Where did? I'll leave it at that, Mr. Mitchell.
Yeah, Travis is excited for the next Federal Communications Commission to free up terahertz of coverage for unlicensed use. He might be disappointed.
I think we're going to be very pleasantly surprised what happens over the next number of years here. I don't know what changed, but it feels like change is in the air.
Roger, so you mentioned VR. We're seeing some more stuff, and you've been a VR guy for a while. You know, I think Apple probably swung and missed by most people's thoughts. What's happening on that front?
Yeah, Apple doesn't show up at CES. Obviously, we all know about their device and its flop. I think they really missed the mark because they think, you know, this is a productivity thing. And really what's been popular with VR is entertainment and gaming. So if Apple had really pushed those things into their product, you'd get all the gamers and people willing to fork out some money using it. In fact, I probably would have, you know, if I could go kill zombies on an Apple Vision Pro, I'd probably buy it, right? But if I'm going to put that thing on and do Microsoft Word and Excel, like, this is stupid. And like, does it work? Yeah, absolutely. But it's not the use case that people are going to go shell out several $1,000s for. Yeah. So we do see the gaming type ones, or just others that are out there, you know, pushing resolutions and frame rates and field of view and all that stuff. So every year we're kind of seeing advancement in that. We're seeing a lot of cool haptic devices with gloves and vests and all this stuff. That was my Christmas present to myself, was some B-Haptics tech sleeves that give you a little bit of feedback on your wrist as you're shooting things. You get kind of that kickback. So I love that sort of stuff.
The geekiness that just happened on this show.
Oh, but
how
do they communicate, Roger? How do they communicate? Like, if they use Bluetooth, or is there another like a proprietary thing, or what?
No, I mean, my favorite game with the VR is Half-Life Alyx, and it's a lot of things connecting and talking at the same time. So I've got everything connected Bluetooth to the computer, and then Wi-Fi to stream the display using the MetaQuest 3 as basically just a display. It's not using the internal computing because it's not powerful enough to run the really high-end games. But with a gaming PC, Bluetooth, all the things connected into the computer, and then pushing that to the display on the Quest 3, that's really your best VR gaming setup. And it's pretty awesome. And the more accessories keep coming out, the more, you know, immersive the experience is. And I again, that's a category I love seeing and checking out every year at CES. it's still not quite where it needs to be. There's still, I'd love to see higher resolutions and frame rates, and cost points are tough when you get into that stuff. But, that's the trick. I mean, a lot of people think this is just a technology thing, but it's really a manufacturing technology thing. Like, how do you make this stuff for a price that people can afford to buy it? And obviously there's ongoing advancement there.
Bob, any questions or points about CES?
Well, I mean, let's face it, Chris, I think it's going to be the AI enhanced adult toys that everyone's sending pictures around from the show. That's really going to be the thing that reacts with the American consumer. It's funny because, so many of these companies are really trying to get into CES to show that they're really advanced. A lot of the car companies are there. They're doing all sorts of things, like they're trying to figure out, the infotainment system in the vehicles. How can you make people more connected? How can we be more connected to the internet? With the rise of podcasting, shows like this, how do you become more part of the in-vehicle experience? So I think you're going to see a lot of investment, from that. The geeky stuff is always going to be there. And, I'm just disappointed that, can't do, spreadsheets. What they really need are like haptic gloves to do like virtual door knocking to get virtual customers for ISPs. I think that would be groundbreaking.
Any other questions? Doug, I don't think you had really had a chance to go yet.
No, I'm always just listening in here. So it's, it doesn't sound like anything groundbreaking broadband wise, but it's just every year an incremental jump up. So yeah, that's yep.
Can I just say that Travis just distracted me by saying that Bob looks like he has hay behind his name?
Hey.
Travis, was that what you wanted to say?
Larry.
Well, I wanted to commend the current FCC for passing the low-powered 6 gigahertz topic. So the future Bluetooth applications are going to get exponentially better. So, I do want to shed some light on the current administration and the good work they're doing. So,
all right.
With that 6 gigahertz, Mr. Mitchell, we've talked about that once or twice, I think, haven't we?
And Roger, any last comments on CES?
Yeah, I really felt like this was the year that we would see Sarah Connor show up and say, stop everything that you're doing, because the two probably most dominant themes that have kind of showed up recently are being pushed are both AI, but also robots. I mean, there were so many different robots at this show. I mean, we got your lawnmowers but you had ones that would go around and pick up dirty socks off the floor and go put them in the washing machine. And we're like, here we go. Here's some practical use of robots. It was pretty interesting. But humanoid robots and little kid-friendly, cute robots, but they're amazing. And again, it's not so much like we haven't been able to build robots before, but the manufacturing technology of being able to make them at scale and cheaper is making huge improvements. And so that was a huge area. Then you enable those robots with AI, and here we have Sarah Connor getting a little bit nervous about things. But it is fun to see the use cases and developments in those spaces. But both of those, AI and robots, have really been taking on a bigger presence.
Are those BABA compliant?
If we think about people who are at home, aging in place, rather than going to a healthcare facility or a retirement home or something like that, you can imagine how much better it is to have a robot vacuum cleaner that can also be able to sense if a person is in danger or has fallen over or something like that. You can imagine adding a little bit of intelligence to other things that are doing basic tasks that can suddenly really help people who are at home who are at some high degree of risk.
And pick up your socks. Yes. So.
And pick up your socks. Yes. That was one of the ones I did see. All right. Roger, thank you for pulling off the road to give us the report. Much appreciated.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for having me on. Take care.
Thank you.
All right. And actually, Roger, if we can put you back up real quick, let me ask you if you did you want to make any predictions before you start driving back?
If you do, we're going to
don't know.
shame you a year from now about them, just so you know. Yes.
Yeah, I don't think we're seeing a lot of BEAD progress. How about that? I think it'll be canceled though. I don't know.
All right.
It'll be interesting. I'm interested in your predictions. I haven't given any much thought to it, so I think you guys have a lot more to say on the predictions. We'll
Yes,
see.
although perhaps not more insight, but more to say for sure. All right. Well, thank you, Roger. I want to make sure that we all have a chance to gang up on Bob before he has to get cut loose. So we've seeded the discussion thanks to Doug's thoughts with some predictions that we can all react to, or topics that we should be focused on. Bob, do you want to jump in with any of these?
I want to jump in with something that's a little near and dear to my heart, because I'm not an expert on USF, and that would be, the ISP and customer experience. I think that my predictions have to do with private equity and what's going to happen a year from now. I think there's two things. Number one is that there's been a deprioritization of customer experience and running some of these ISPs via spreadsheet instead of going out and really prioritizing what's best for customers. When you're a smaller ISP competing against a larger incumbent, you can't necessarily win on price, but you can win on customer experience and being local. You start eroding that trust, and there's very little differentiation between, being a big ISP that people tend to complain about and a smaller local one. So I think that's going to change quite a bit. And I think
Sorry, before you go on, so to measure that, basically perhaps a rise of more complaints, perhaps a drop in the ACSI, although it'll take a little bit for us to actually see that in the surveys, I think.
a decay in subscribers too.
Oh, sure. Higher churn would be signs of that. I fully expect that. I mean, we've been watching, we have not seen many municipal networks privatized in the past 5 years or so. Those that have, I've kept an eye on them to get a sense and try to talk to local folks about what they're seeing. And in many cases, when they've gone to larger private equity backed organizations, companies, the company is only putting money into acquiring new customers, and they are not upgrading or really managing. And so they're actually eroding the take rate often. They're just, particularly the small businesses, they're losing often when before they had many. So
why do you think that is, Chris? Why do you think that they're losing the small businesses? Or are you asking why they're losing the small businesses, or do they have any intel on that?
Well, I mean, let me just say, I'm one that I've been switching from Lumen, which has been a disaster for our voice over IP, to USI, this plucky company that I found nearby, and it is hard. I have hard questions. I ask them dumb questions because I'm not, I'm like, I don't understand why this isn't working, and I have to keep bothering their customer support, and I'm an expensive person, and so small businesses are harder to manage. I think especially ones that don't have, a knowledgeable person that is in charge of IT. So I think that's one issue. And the other thing is, I think small businesses have many more choices. Many small businesses can choose between 5 or 6 companies, not as many as we'd like, but still they often have more choices than residents do, I think. That's my thought. I don't know if anyone else has any thoughts on that.
I do. I've actually tracked a few of those that have gone private as well. And what they did was, I don't think they realize how labor intensive it is to keep small businesses happy with you. You have to keep visiting them and keep them happy. And what they've done is cut back the people who do that and not pay the salaries to keep them on. And so when you stop knocking on their doors, they slide away over time. So yes, they are definitely not as good at that, because that costs money and they don't like to spend expenses. So
yeah. Travis, any quick thoughts before we let Bob continue and then try to pile on him?
Yeah, the only thing I would add is I've noticed a lot of small to medium-sized businesses, their IT has been outsourced to some sort of managed service provider. And if you get on the wrong side of the managed service provider, you can lose 20, 30 customers almost overnight. So, that would be the only add I would bring is your relationship isn't always with the final user.
Well, I think that's a good point, Travis, is that small businesses are needy, but they don't have the people in house to do it like bigger enterprise size businesses, right? So they're needier than residential customers. So they're in this middle. And if you don't have that person, it's really hard to keep them.
Yeah.
That makes a lot of sense.
Or if you're MSP, like let's say you're having problems with your printers and you get mad and you fire them and get a new one, the new one might have a preference for an alternate ISP as well. So I'm just saying there's usually a lot more to it than just handing a single family home an internet connection that they use to stream Netflix and do their day-to-day, business.
Yeah, I mean, the telephone services are really, that's where I think a lot of small businesses, it's really important to be able to answer the line and talk to people.
And it's difficult. That is really the hardest part.
Yeah.
Is doing the phone systems.
All right, Bob, what was the other one you got?
Well, and it's interesting because there's that dichotomy, private equity is short-term transactional. The world of ISP, the world of broadband is long-term relational. And so the two cultures kind of clash there. And I'm not saying that it can't work. I think it can work, but I think there's got to be a happy medium that has to be achieved.
Bob, you're out there in Connecticut. You kind of know how the world works in ways that others of us may not. Also, I feel like a lot of these mergers and these conglomerations are made by people that know how to merge companies together, but they don't know how to do anything else, right? I mean, like their job is to merge the companies together to make them bigger and then to go find other companies to make bigger. And they don't really know much about, I think maybe it looks like maybe you think that's an oversimplification.
I think there are teams that do that, and then there are teams that know how to run them, or they bring in, a team that knows how to run a company. I mean, there's lots of successful examples, and there's lots of unsuccessful examples. It really just depends on the situation.
But I think
McKinley has an opinion.
Yeah, McCarran has an opinion over here. But what I was trying to say is I think that, Bob, maybe I'm wrong of what you're trying to say, is that broadband's very different, that it's a more of a relationship business than product marketing. And a lot of these PE firms and all these people who are buying these are very much more transactional people. And broadband, at the end of the day, like we all know each other. It's a very, very small industry and we all know each other and you can't screw each other over. And it's merely a service type of industry, which people don't really understand when they're selling this product.
Yeah, so I think you're going to see a lot of challenges down the road. And then I think the other prediction that I have is I think there's going to be the next round of unforeseen circumstances when it comes to BEAD. Whether BEAD survives or not. And the first round of unforeseen circumstances is that spending stopped immediately because everyone was waiting for the magic BEAD money to come down, and it's been very, very slow to come out. And so the broadband market, it's not that it came to a grinding halt, but it slowed down significantly and it's starting to pick up. I think the next round of unforeseen circumstances is going to come, dare I say, clutch the pearls, Kim, because you're in the construction industry now, is in construction because there aren't enough contractors, there aren't enough subcontractors. So I think there's going to be a war for subcontractors, and are they trained properly? Do they know how to
good
carry a build?
Good subcontractors,
right? Do they understand customer experience? I know, Kim, you talk about this all the time, that the customer experience begins with construction, and so there's going to be a lot of shakeup in the subcontractor market. And a lot of things getting bogged down. And what's that going to do to the price of labor? And is that going to push up costs further? We're going to say.
Does that require deportations, Bob? Because I feel like that's one of the question marks.
What are you implying?
If there are deportations, we know that that the construction industry and the outside plant folks, are more have a higher percentage of people.
Are you trying to say build the wall?
Are you trying to deport me, Chris? Is that what we're trying to say right now?
He's trying to build the wall, Kim.
I am. Well, I'm curious because there's a question about will there be significant deportations or something that disrupts the industry? Because Bob, what I'm seeing right now is that there's like sort of a glut of work out there a glut of workers out there, and that we all know the money's not coming immediately. It's going to be sort of the pipeline's going to slowly start filling up. But I'm not convinced that absent, some significant change in immigration policy, that there will be an overwhelming amount of work for the existing number of subcontractors. I can't tell.
Is that your prediction for 2025, Chris?
I'm trying to figure it out. I mean, it depends on how I'm feeling that morning. I think. I don't know if Doug or Travis want to jump in.
That was a brave prediction, Chris. That was excellent.
I think Travis would say they're going to build the wall with a hammer and sickle.
So
No,
I will say, I mean, if you want me to, I'll do it quick, which is just to say that I think there will be a few deportations, and then there will be some coverage, and the Trump administration will announce that it's deported 10 million people or some high number. And what was curious for me is whether people who are here decide to leave who may not have legal status, or they may not have their entire family may not have legal status. And so it's hard to predict, because I don't think there's going to be that many actual government deportations. But there are a number of families that may decide to leave because they do not want to risk it. And I think that's probably what will happen.
So maybe the broadband industry needs to say, we need more legal pathways for employment to build our networks.
I think that Mike McCarthy, who made the comment, is saying it correctly. I think that there's going to be more people coming from different trades to fill in the gaps that we're seeing in this construction industry. Like right now alone, you're seeing that we need 28,000 construction contractors, or like people out on the streets to fulfill the need. That's today. That's before even BEAD hits. But I think you're just going to see a pivot in people moving from other industries into broadband. I mean, I get your deportation.
I mean, I think people will leave Texas and go to California, perhaps, because even though the cost of living is so much higher in California, I think Texas and Florida may be the states where we see some of the deportations start, and those states are maybe driving out the labor. Doug, I started you and then I cut you off earlier.
And that's actually my prediction. It's going to be a shift from red to blue. The folks who are scared of being deported will go to blue states. And so there's going to be a real dearth of construction workers in the red South. So,
yeah. And I'll be curious to see what happens when the next hurricanes go. I mean, I think this is happening in Florida right now, where they're struggling in ag and they're struggling with rebuilding, because I think a fair number of people have left. Mike is making really good points in the chat there. I mean, like the amount of the disasters. I mean, I don't know how we handle the level of new disasters happening, the amount of rebuilding that needs to happen, because it's not going to get better. We might have a year or two where we get a break, but we're going to keep breaking records for horrific storms, I think.
So I have a question for the group. If you're saying that the red South is going to see a lot of people like go to the blue states, and that's red South is where you're seeing a lot of the construction happen in the broadband industry now, what do you think is going to happen to those projects?
they will have a harder time getting their subcontractors is what I'm saying. So, yeah.
Which means they'll
the
probably still
projects are going to happen. Yeah.
They're going to happen, and they'll happen with lower quality subcontractors, I'm guessing, right?
Yeah.
They'll pull in more people who are less reliable.
Well,
Bob?
and let's talk
more for labor.
And let's talk about what that means. And if we really have 28,000 shortage, what happens is, because I've worked on projects 5 years ago, we had this problem. Every Monday you go in and see how many of your subcontractors actually show up. And your subcontractors have to do that. They're like, 3 of my crew didn't show up because they just got a job with a Verizon project this week. And so that's the real challenge, is the subcontractors will be there, but they'll have a problem keeping their people there. It gets to be very ugly when there's a shortage. So, now, Travis, you mostly hire your folks, right?
No, we use subcontractors. I guess if we're saying predictions, I think there will be very few, if any, deportations of the labor pool. I think you'll see a lot of deportations of criminal elements in the country. And last I looked, they're not building fiber networks, at least up here in Minnesota. So I think the deportation thing is a good CNN headline. I'm not sure it's a good reality of what's on the ground. I would just tell you, there's new, I guess I'll speak to Minnesota, there's new laws and regulations about underground construction now that are going to continue to add more and more and more expense. So I think you're just going to continue to see broadband prices rise to offset all the additional expenses that are going to come in, either from a labor standpoint or from additional regulatory issues that are coming in at the state level. So my $100 or Doug's $100 broadband prediction, I don't think is that far off at this point.
Bob, you're going to have to be cut loose pretty soon, I know. Anything you want to react to, make a final lob a grenade before you head out?
Well, I wasn't sure we were going to be speaking about immigration today, so I think that was a very interesting curveball.
It's a surprise to me too.
It was a surprise. You never know what comes out, but I think I'll do one more prediction, and we'll drop a mic on this one. I think you're going to see some companies that made a big splash a couple of years ago go under because of lack of capital. They can't raise it because either they've had some really bad quality control, in their construction, or the customer experience hasn't been good, or the industry relations hasn't been good, and haven't hung out on relationships. So I think you're going to see the landscape change, and a couple of players that were well known are going to shift.
Be purchased, do you think? I mean, is that what we'll see? Is like we won't necessarily even know, or will we be obvious that they're in trouble and bought out in some way?
I don't even know bought out, or maybe bought out for pennies on the dollar.
Mm-hmm. Oh, you think they could actually just literally shut down?
We'll see.
Yeah. All right. Anyone want to react to that?
I like how we just did the drop. Like, we'll see. Go ahead,
We'll
Doug.
see. It's prediction.
There's definitely a few companies in financial trouble. So I think he's right. So, yep.
Thanks, Doug.
All right. Well, we have one last comment here, which I think is worth noting. People have expressed the desire that I not get too political, which I can appreciate. I think what Travis said is correct. There's a number of people in the administration who do not intend to deport those who have not engaged in criminal acts or been caught. There are others in the administration who do want to deport. So we'll be curious to see who wins the day with that policy fight. As is in many administrations, there are different views of people, and the question is who will win the policy fight at what time in order to see what will really happen. So it's hard to predict. That's why we're here, to make predictions, I guess.
Well, we hear your name is being floated around for the assistant deputy border czar position in the new administration, Chris. So please let us know.
My truck has in the winter has a weak range, so I don't even know if I can get to the Canadian border. It's the only border I'm that familiar with, to be honest.
Well, thanks for having me on the show today. Happy New Year to everyone, and we'll see which predictions come true.
Thank you, Bob. We'll catch you again in the future.
See you, Bob.
See you guys.
All right.
Yep,
So
yeah.
There's been a couple of people who have boldly suggested that they think BEAD will be substantially changed. I feel like I have generally seen others assuming that BEAD will more or less roll out in a show that will be released on Tuesday in Community Broadband Bits. I talk with Blair Levin about things, and in that show, I say that I feel like a lot of people have underestimated the chances of BEAD being substantially changed, but I think the most likely case is that BEAD has a scary moment or two and then does largely happen the way it was planned. Any other BEAD predictions among the three of you? Kim, go first.
I was just going to say, I think that you're going to see BEAD change for the technology standpoint. I think that if we have to use the BEAD money to so connect all of the homes, I just don't think they can do it with the fiber only solutions and some of the others. I think you're going to see a little bit lax of fixed wireless and other solutions coming back into play with BEAD.
Doug?
First of all, I agree with you. It's already gotten too far down the road, and it's hard to imagine they would come back to a state like Louisiana and say, we're going to change your grants on you. So I think that it's already got momentum. There's 20 states now with grant portals open. So I think that they'll shake it up some, and I think more of the money will go to satellite, but it's still going to largely stay on track, is my prediction. What is going to go away, there's a bunch of states that have run around bragging that they have extra money. That's going to be taken away from them. They're not going to get to spend that money. So
how do you think that's going to be executed, Doug? How do you think that they're going to take that money away, though?
Probably ACH transfer.
Yeah. Yeah, I think they're just going to send them a bill and then give them to the credit guys to go pursue, I believe. So, but no, it's easy to take back because Congress can do that. Congress can certainly claw the money back. It's non-deployment fund, so it's been identified, and they're not guaranteed that they can spend it. They have to get their plans approved, and they just won't approve them. So,
I'm gonna steal one. I want to throw this at Travis. I want to steal one from one of my colleagues at the in the Community Broadband Networks program. I think the decision to embrace low Earth orbit satellites, which not just Starlink but also Kuiper, it looks like, I think fixed wireless is gonna get far less than anyone assumed. It looks to me, I think states are gonna focus on fiber where they can't do fiber. At that point, it may be more cost effective to give those people satellite, to quote unquote give them satellite, than it is to do fixed wireless. I think this might be even worse for fixed wireless than we thought.
Well,
Whoa,
there's a
that's
reason.
a hot
There's
take.
another reason for that. You know, the speeds that they've guaranteed means they buy Tirana, and that's not cheap. It's not all that much cheaper out of the grant program than the fiber. It's not the big difference that you would have thought, and so I think that's against them. So, yeah.
So we'll try and get Matt on from VistaBeam, Matt Larson, and see what his thoughts are. But I'm curious, Travis, how you react to that.
Well, I guess my prediction for 2025 is there will be exactly 0 new subscribers hooked up that benefit from BEAD.
I did not see that coming. I was just like, I was looking on the horizon, and it just came out of nowhere.
This is why you called him plucky. This is why you called him plucky.
I don't know. Is it fiber? Is it wireless? Is it satellite? Is it copper wire?
It's vaporware. That's what you're saying, Travis.
It doesn't matter because this quagmire is just going to continue on for another year.
So, Takey McTaker, if we ignore the comment about Musk, from a national security point of view, I have seen national security types starting to discuss this point of whether the United States should nationalize Starlink. It is fascinating. And I actually think that if there's a major falling out between Trump and Elon, which I predicted would happen by May, if I remember correctly, it would not surprise me if the United States moves down that path. I would be curious. I don't understand how it would happen. It seems crazy to me, but I would say that I could see it happening. Doug.
Yeah, and the headquarters will be in Greenland, I think. So,
yeah, could be. I'm not going to go too far down that, but I don't think anyone realizes that if Greenland, Canada, and Panama get senators, the Republicans are not going to be super happy with which party that those areas likely select. So I don't think that they're going to become states.
Didn't you say that you didn't want to talk about politics?
I did. That was just a fact. I'm just going to throw it out there as a little, I just feel like people aren't thinking this through. Greenland, I would love to vacation in Greenland without needing a visa, which I probably don't already. I don't know.
Now, before we leave BEAD, let's talk about the digital equity money, because there's a huge amount of digital equity money. Yes,
I think that's gone. I think the DEI stuff is going in the trash a little bit.
To be clear, digital equity is not DEI stuff. We're talking about veterans. There are some aspects of it that could be acute. And I think you're saying, Kim, that others will use that talking point.
Yeah.
But it is the correct interpretation of that. It is for many people in rural areas, a lot of people who would not fall into the traditional DEI bucket, stand to benefit from that program. But I think that's I don't want to admit to it, but I'm afraid of it.
Well, there's going to be an interesting fight since they already made a bunch of awards the other day. Can they stop those? I think there's a good chance they'll try to. So, yeah.
I think y'all think I'm sweet. I think Juan Roman is confused about how his tongue works, accusing me of being bitter. There's nothing bitter about it. I'm a sweet guy.
I've been laughing about that comment for the past 3 minutes since it popped up.
It's the new haircut. He's really got us all disarmed.
Oh no, it's new gel. The hair is not been cut. For people who are listening to this, you are just missing out on. You really should be doing something else. I'll be honest. I'm not going to lie to you. Travis, did you have an area you want to go next as we leave BEAD? I
did want to thank you, Mr. Mitchell. I took a flight to Dallas, Texas, 2 hours and 5 minutes, and you can get 3.5 broadband bits in during that flight. So thank you for entertaining me on my way down to Texas this last week.
Did you know that you can speed it up? I'm at 3x for audiobooks and podcasts now, and you can just really you could read like Les Mis on the way down if you wanted to.
I'm pretty basic. I go 1x. I want to hear all your inflections in real time.
Doug, what's a hot prediction you wanted to make sure you got out?
Well, I think other states are going to all jump on board and make ISPs give low rates out like New York was just allowed to do. So,
all right. So what's your guess? What's the number?
For this year, I think maybe only 3 or 4, but it's going to be 3 or 4 a year after that. I think it'll be, a dozen in a couple of years. But I say 3 or 4 will jump on board. There's no way California is going to let this pass without doing it. Washington State's going to do it. Illinois will probably do it. So, yeah.
Kim?
Wow, that's a hot take. That's a hot take, Doug, because I don't think they will.
Oh, I don't know, Kim. I think Doug's right, and I think if I had to pick over under, I'd take the over on Doug's number there. Was it 4,
California?
Doug, or 3?
I said 3.
3.
I think.
So yeah, I would take the over for sure.
See, I think that California is a sure bet, but since they have a budget crisis right now, like I just think that that's just not going to happen right now.
But they don't have to pay for it. That's the beauty.
This doesn't cost them anything.
Yes, I agree, but I just don't think that they're going to do this. I just don't like after I said that, then I realized they didn't have to pay for it. But I still don't think they're going to do it. I don't think that they're going to do it. I don't think that this is going to pass.
For me, it was after the net neutrality decision, which, it's foolish to keep calling it net neutrality because it's about so many other issues. The federal government is not going to do anything on affordability. I think, like Doug says, I'm probably too ambitious. But if we come back in 3 years, I'll bet more than 10 states have low income programs, and I would say possibly even 20.
Travis, what do you think? I need somebody on maybe myself.
I guess I just don't understand how they can even do it. Maybe that's where we start. I mean, how can a state mandate a private company for price fixing?
They just did it in New York, and
what's their legal foundation for it?
They didn't have one. They just said the big ISPs make too much money. They should lower the rates.
So
Travis, that's a good question. We can.
I mean, I'm not being facetious. I just don't know how it's
Well,
possible.
there is a legal basis. The legal basis is the FCC's not regulated it, so we are allowed to. Is the legal basis?
Yeah, I mean, so Travis, I mean, this gets to the power of the state. The power of the state is, I think, restrained more by, a fear of creating a majority that would vote against you, more than being reined in by limits. States have different constitutions. I would guess that many states have some way of locating this within their constitution as to it falling within their powers. I think we should have someone on who knows a lot more about law who could help us.
I just don't know, because if you take that logic, I think $12 for a frozen pizza is too much. Can they, while they're dealing with internet service, can they also?
I think they could. I mean, I don't think states would, but I think that we are in an era in which government has significant powers, such that many people would like to see it whittled back and controlled in some ways. But I think this is well within the power of most states, possibly all states, to do.
Hang on, one more, Kim, because you asked. And I think my property tax is too high. Can they handle that as well?
Some states do have, I think, limits on how much you can increase property taxes.
There's a half a dozen states with a limit on that. Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you what. I'll give them cheaper internet if they cut off 20% off my property tax.
This is where I don't get it. So a lot of these providers get USF funds and they get other federal funds, and then they're saying then we have to mandate a price point, right? Aren't you? So you're getting government money over here, and then you're saying you need a low cost product over here, right?
This gets into one way that government can do things is by conditioning it on support. But for someone like Travis that doesn't take funds, it's harder to then try to get your hooks into him without using the general power to just say, thou shalt do this thing, as opposed to, if you want this thing that we're giving you. I mean, this is how they regulate, I think, hospitals often, right? Hospitals are dependent on public dollars. And so they put all the conditions that if you take the public dollars, you have to do A, B, and C. But there are ways of them otherwise saying you have to do A, B, and C, regardless of whether you're taking public support or anything else.
Now back to New York and your question, Kim. There's nothing to stop those ISPs from getting money out of the high cost fund to help cover those lower rates. They're not precluded from doing that. So,
yeah, and I mean, I think first of all, there's something here from Mike McCarthy. I mean, this gets into the public right of way, which is I think it's an area in which I strongly believe there should be some local accountability for access to the right of way. I think, you know, Travis, I suspect that you take it somewhat for granted that you can dig under the property right adjacent to the street there, and you don't have to individually negotiate with landowners to do that. I think that's good because I want to see you deploy your services, and I'd hate to see you negotiating with 100,000 landlords.
No, but I agree with Mike, but the thing is we pay for that. We pay big.
Right.
We pay big.
Right. And so that comes with conditions, some of which are money, some of which can be other things. And now these things are limited by federal law and state law as to what can be demanded and what the limits are often. But this is where we could continue, but I think we're exceeding our knowledge on it pretty quick.
Can I add one thing? Go. Oh, sorry, Kim, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say we're exceeding our knowledge because I have so many questions of how this all intersects. But go ahead.
Here's the point that's really sort of ironic to me. I'm actually surprised most ISPs don't have a lower cost product because your overall market share will increase, pretty substantially because you're already going by those properties with your network. So really, if you're running an ISP in a pretty diverse community, you should be offering a low-cost product without the government being involved because your overall uptake is going to be higher. Your EBITDA will be higher. Everything about it makes sense. So I'm actually surprised some don't do.
Doug, did you want to respond to that before you return to the point you were going to make before?
No, that's exactly right. And it turns out that in New York, because they kind of sensed this was coming, they all went ahead and implemented these low-cost things before the court ruling. So they actually agreed with that. So
yeah,
I mean, they should have low cost ones, especially cable companies. It's like the cost of a drop is so small that why the heck would they not do it? Yeah.
We have thousands of people on our version of ACP that we wouldn't have otherwise. And again, I'm no fancy CFO, but $1 is better than $0 if your infrastructure is already there.
But I really struggle with telling private companies what they have to do with their products. I mean,
welcome aboard the libertarian train. I mean, I feel like I have this argument with myself more than many people realize, but and I feel like we've had decades in which I don't think we've talked about this publicly. I don't think people have really reckoned with it. They've just sort of done things, and most people have ignored it. And I think that might be changing. I don't know.
No, just to make sure y'all agree, I'm against them doing this. I don't like the idea of government doing this at all. So I'm just saying it's coming. So
yeah, I mean, for me, it comes down to I also don't like them doing it like Doug. I think I am deeply afraid that one of the states or more will do this in a way that is not as thoughtful as New York. I think New York's program is pretty good in terms of setting a limit for the size of the ISPs and having just some safeguards that is not too far. But I think Travis's question that he's raised in the past of sort of, well, why 15? Why not $10? Why don't we pay them to have the service? Like, sort of you can go down a lot of different questions. For me, it comes down to we have an essential service that everyone needs, and much like public schooling, and not everyone has a kid in the system. Fine, we all pay for the public schools. The internet access is something that is deeply needed, and we have a system in which we encourage people to build this on a for-profit basis, and that model is designed to leave people behind, and we don't have a good way to try to fix it. And I don't think a system will work well if we're just like, well, we need more Travis Carters. It'd be nice, but I've been watching this space for years trying to identify Travis Carters. We've had some on the show. There's like 5 or 10 of them, as best I can tell. We've found half of those maybe, but like we can't solve this problem from Travis Carter having a good plan. Like at some point we need to do something to make sure people are connected. And that's where, for me, I'm like, all right, we're going to break a few eggs. Like that's where we're at. Not a great
that was
rant.
getting,
It's 2025.
that was a half of a rant. That was
not your best rant, but we'll give it to you today because of your fancy hair.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't read this yet, but it came from Rudolph, so I wanted to throw it up there. Yeah, I mean, this is one of the things that I also will just say is that, like, for me, I our system is so messed up. Like, it is deeply frustrating that like we're approaching $100 a month, and we all know why. And it's not just the greed of Charter Spectrum and AT&T. It's also there's a lot of other challenges. Government policy on this essential utility, local, state, and federal, unless you're living in Chattanooga or like maybe 100 or 200 other communities, has largely failed this moment in the United States. And we just have so many things to get through. I don't think nationalizing it is a great idea. There are people who are, I just think that takes us longer to get where we actually want to go, because we just end up losing a bunch of legal fights in the process. So it's frustrating. Doug, you were leaning forward, it looked like.
It's time for a new question. Are they going to ban TikTok?
I can't imagine it. I don't think, I mean, I think for a minute, maybe.
It'll be so sad.
Rye said that, Chris, you need to say how many states are going to do low cost.
So yeah, I said I'll stick with, you'll hear in a few weeks when we do my team did some predictions, and I'll just, to avoid trying to do what I do with March Madness, where I have different pools in different areas to try to win something in my life. I'll stick with, I think I said 8 there, and so I'm going real high. I'm going to say 8. Wow. Doug has 4. I have 8. Travis, what do you have?
New York's will be challenged, and they will lose in court, and there will be 0.
There's no more courts.
Negative,
but okay.
Negative 1, he said. Negative 1.
I don't know. Y'all just can't be close. I'm going to throw that out. So
I just wanted to know that Travis and I are on the same page for once. So thanks, Travis. I said 0.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Negative 1.
All right. TikTok. I don't think it's banned for more than a couple days, if that happens.
Nah,
I don't think it'll ever get banned. So
no.
USF, I think we come out. The Supreme Court makes a decision, and ultimately Congress and the FCC do nothing. It remains just sort of moving ahead, and everyone's saying it needs to be fixed, but no one's actually planning to fix it, and it's still in place.
I think they're going to say it's unconstitutional.
Okay,
yeah, that's my prediction.
So for the bonus bet, then, does Congress act on it if it's found unconstitutional? Do they reenact something over the summer?
I think they say they do, but I don't think anything actually happens. But yes, I think that they will say that they're going to reform it or figure out where to go with it after it's deemed unconstitutional. Okay, let's see what my fellow panelists say. Go for it,
so
Doug.
That'll be just like ACP. They'll say they're going to fix it for a whole year. That's interesting. Yes.
Doug, what's happening?
I think they will say it's constitutional, but I don't think anyone's going to fix anything. So yeah.
So you're agreeing? You and I are in the same place then.
Yes.
Travis, any thoughts on USF?
Well, as I'm not educated on it, I'll take the opposite, whatever that is.
Okay. So you're just betting that Doug and I are wrong.
You're
agreeing with Kim again. You guys are getting on the same page a lot here.
Yeah.
Travis, on a previous show, you predicted 3.5% for the targeted federal funds rate by the start of 2026. Sticking by that?
We'll drop another half basis. So where are we at today?
We're at like 4.25, I think, or ish.
Yeah, 3.5, 3.7. Yeah, I'm going to go 3.5. Yep.
Okay.
I'm going to go 1% higher. I'm betting 1% higher.
Yeah, no, I think that's a good bet. I'm betting a half a percent higher.
I'm betting the same today.
Oh, you're going up. You guys are going up, huh? Not down?
Yes, up.
That
Uncertainty means up. Yes.
That's the end of our prediction segment. We got a couple of things. We won't get through them all. We'll run them over to the next show. But if people have anything else they want to throw into the chat per usual, they should feel free to do that. The net neutrality decision. It's funny. USF will remain, and the last person making an interstate call will have to pay it all. That's awesome. Thank you, Rudolph. Net neutrality decision came down. The Federal Communications Commission cannot, at least in the Sixth Circuit, I think, cannot cannot put internet access into the Title II bucket. It is an information service. I think it's ridiculous to think that I'm paying the cable company to manipulate my information. I really don't want them to do that. But nonetheless, we have a decision. It's more or less final, I think. Doug?
Well, it's final. It wouldn't have to be final if somebody else wanted to fight it, because they could get a ruling from another state court but no, I don't think there's anybody who's going to go out and do that. So.
Another circuit. So here's the question, Doug. I don't think a lot of people on the right would support this necessarily, but I think there's a good argument, and I would imagine we might see a sort of right-leaning organization say it is unconstitutional to pay for broadband access out of the Universal Service Fund if it's a Title I service. I don't understand how that all fits together if it's and so I think Lifeline could be put back as telephone only.
That could also put all these grants in jeopardy. Yeah.
I mean, there's a bunch of things that just, I feel like, and that's why I don't like calling it net neutrality, as I call it net neutrality over and over again. It is about whether internet access, can be treated like, it can fit under a whole bunch of other laws in which it is assumed that something so vital could.
You're shaking your predictions up for this year, Mr. Mitchell, like just blowing up the whole internet industry here. But keep going.
Small providers crushed it at the end of 2024. It looks like we have the association, the Rural Broadband folks, the Rural Broadband Association, right? NTCA released a survey of their members. It's pretty remarkable. Let's see here. I'm going to pull this over. They found that 89% of respondents' customers on average can receive downstream speeds 100 or greater. There was 84% in 2023. This is like, I don't know, more than 1,000 local companies that have been making these investments. Granted, many of those companies are in my state or Iowa or Illinois, but a lot of these small providers have done a tremendous job. They said more than 76% of customers have access to gigabit downstream speeds. 85% of customers respondents had on average upload speeds of 100 or higher. To me, it was just a reminder that we don't have a rural broadband problem. We have a problem with AT&T and Lumen and Verizon and a few big telephone companies.
So when they're talking about the NTCA, are they, you just said this, I think, but is it just the members that they polled, or is it the whole? Okay.
Just their own members.
So
remember, these guys, and these guys also are the ones who've been chasing all the grants now, all the state grants. So they've been very active in that piece of the world. So
because some of those rural providers have been kicking ass and taking names on some of this, so I can totally believe that. But I mean, I love Shirley Bloomfield, and I think she's doing an amazing job. But this is a little bit of a biased poll, because if you're only talking the membership, then what does rural America really look like?
Well, that's just it, though. I mean, rural America more or less falls into, you are either, AT&T, Frontier, CenturyLink, Verizon, TDS, or you're in the NTCA. I mean, there's hundreds that aren't, maybe, but they're mostly tiny. I think this is a non-representative of the entire United States sample, but it gives you a sense that these small companies, many of whom rely on government subsidies for aspects of their operation, they have done a tremendous job. And connecting rural America is not that hard. And let's go back, because this is where this might be a short rant. I don't know. Like, we'll see how it comes out of my mouth. But like, in 10 years ago, 2014-ish, 2012-ish, when they were figuring out the Connect America plan, people at the Federal Communications Commission looked at a map and they said, these companies are doing a great job. NTCA companies, they're doing a good job. And then they said, how can we give money to AT&T and AT&T and Lumen and the companies that are doing a bad job, rather than saying, how do we supercharge these companies, or how do we learn lessons from them that are doing a great job? Those small companies have gone on to continue doing good stuff with some FCC support, while the FCC was spending billions of dollars to try to get CenturyLink to do 1% of what these companies were doing, and all that money was totally wasted.
But to be fair, to those big companies, I'm seeing them put a lot of investment into some of these areas as well. I'm not saying that it's everywhere, but I am seeing, at least for like in my particular area, you see a lot of Lumen investment here in Utah right now. So like,
we'll see. And in 5 years, we'll see if people are thrilled to have a Lumen monopoly in their rural areas. Travis put his hand up earlier.
I was just curious, how do you know these companies are doing a good job?
Yeah, I mean, that's a fair point. Generally through the sense of customer satisfaction surveys and things like that. Some of them aren't. I mean, I've run into some here in Minnesota that have a terrible reputation.
I wasn't trying
most seem to be doing good. Yeah, I mean, like, for me, it's a question of like, going through these towns, talking to some of the people from them, reading, local newspapers or having a sense of it. But it seems like they're often doing a good job. Some aren't.
I spent 4 days in northern Texas, on the north side of Dallas. I couldn't believe how big AT&T's network was up there. I mean, they're everywhere. So I'm not sure if it's good, bad, or indifferent, but you can get fiber to the home all throughout Dallas, Texas. And
yes, they're the cities. They're building the cities, but they're not building the rural areas.
Yeah.
That's rural area. That's a rural area of North Dallas, right? Like, I mean, you weren't in the
There were horses.
Okay, so it's one thing. It's one thing to be building it out. And I'm not sitting here saying that I know that AT&T is terrible everywhere. I've heard people have AT&T fiber. They're perfectly happy with it. Nonetheless, the prices go up more. The customer service sucks. Something goes wrong. You got to be on the phone with someone from AT&T. It's, like just building fiber is not the solution. The solution is whether or not there is a good service. The thing that makes electrification in the United States an amazing process that worked is that 85 years later, we more or less have those same co-ops having very good relationships in their communities, having served reliable, low-cost power for all of this time. And we've seen over the past 100 years what the private electric monopolies have done, and we can compare them. And for me, I draw empirical lessons away from that local ownership that is representative. It makes a big difference.
Let's just talk about the electrification system, Chris. Let me challenge this, because the electrification system of America is mixed with private and public, right? And we can have all of our opinions, but that's what makes America today. And isn't that what's going to make the
you can have
company?
Opinions are fine, but you can look at storms that come through.
But not your opinion, yes.
What I'm saying is, like, people know to disregard my opinions as they see fit. Like, it's just like there's like stamped on my forehead. But like what I'm trying to describe is that, like, if a massive hurricane comes through the Northeast and it tears down poles at random, and you look at systems where you have private electricity from National Grid versus municipal systems, you can compare how long their downtime is. You can look at what they've charged over time and how the costs have changed over decades. And overwhelmingly, one finds that the public systems do far better on things that you can measure scientifically. Now, not to say that they're all better. There's some that are bad. But like, we know from 100 years of experience of utilities that like local ownership makes a difference in pricing, reliability, and a bunch of other things when it comes to essential services.
Yeah, but
I would disagree with that a little bit. I mean, I lived where we had a disaster, and Duke Power did an amazing job getting power back up. And in the last 5 years, they've been implementing smart grid. Now, where they fall down is their prices are way higher than the co-ops around here. So right. they're good at 2 or 3 of the 4, right? But
right,
yeah, there's a huge difference in prices.
So I mean, I'll just say that, like, I agree. So my colleague John Farrell, for people who are interested in this stuff, like, we do a lot of work on electric companies. If you look at Ohio, where they just recently got caught, literally, I think, paper bags of money being exchanged to buy services for First Energy. I don't remember what it's called now. There's a lot of shenanigans that go on, and for me, it was always going back to, like, I just feel like when you look at private electricity from the investor-owned utilities, when the electricity went out in New Orleans, you'll remember this, the Super Bowl, when the electricity went out, and this is just terrible media reporting, but everyone was like, what happened? And they asked Entergy, which is a terrible investor-owned utility that rips off cities constantly, and Entergy was like, the system performed as it was supposed to. There was a fault, and so the system shut down the way it was supposed to. And if you listen to that, you got the sense that every other Super Bowl where the power stayed on the whole time, they did something wrong. It was like the most ridiculous thing. So I just can't, Duke is probably good, and Duke's costs might be high because of poor investments in nuclear power plants that went over budget, right? Like, you can't always tell. Right. It's complicated. But when you look at the fact that we have 2,000 municipal utilities, like 900 electric cooperatives, and we have a bunch of investor-owned utilities that serve a majority of power to people, we can do comparisons.
My favorite is Doug gave you one example of Duke Power, and then you're like, well, Duke might be the outlier. Like, I mean, I think it happens everywhere.
I'm not just making this up. Like, I've studied the electrical system. It's what I did before I got into broadband. And
how do I get the bags of money? Where do you sign up for that?
first, you want to be
You gotta be
you
in
either want to
college.
be elected to office or have your father elected to office. In the case of Ohio, I believe
Oh, I see. Okay.
it helps to be the head of
or the
everything.
president, I guess. So we'll just leave it at that. No, but what Chris is missing here is
I'm almost out of breath.
what Chris is missing. I would love to run any kind of network, water, power, or internet, where you have 100% market share. I mean,
Yeah,
it is an absolute game changer.
Yeah, no, and that's the question. That's the question about nationalizing the system. It's not kooky. Many places have nationalized systems. Now, many of them have gone away from it because there's a tremendous ability to mismanage and mess it up. And at that point, when you have only one system and it's mismanaged, everyone is screwed. And so there's reasons that many of us are concerned about this. And so, yeah, and actually, this question here, Takey McTaker, reminds us about PG&E. We're talking about electric utilities, like,
Yes.
so Travis, I agree with you. And the thing for me is that if we're going to have a system in which we have multiple overlapping networks, which I think is preferable to one system to rule them all, we need to have some kind of nonprofit element in it. I think ideally controlled by cooperatives or local governments as a public option to try to make sure that we have something that is focused on the low income folks. So. Oh, Juan, I'm sorry. I need you to be a little less political.
Yeah, Ukraine internet. We'll get all the cash we need. Huh? You know what? As a Duke shareholder, I want to say, you know what? I love Duke Energy. Keep it up, buddy. So, well,
I'll tell you, I mean, when I am knowing all these municipal utilities, I have, you hear us talk about this, I'm sure. I'm now leasing an EV. I have a second meter on my garage, and I cannot believe how hard it is to deal with Xcel Energy, who, operates in 8 states or 10 states or something like that. And I want Chattanooga to come take over St. Paul. It'd be nice.
Well, hold on. I thought you were just saying that the big monopolies were the best. And now you're saying you can't deal with Xcel Energy?
I think I may have been unclear if your takeaway was that monopolies are the best.
I just want to make sure I understood what you were saying. So,
no, I mean, in telecommunications, we have 100 years of experience of publicly owned nationalized systems, and they largely engaged in theft, is my understanding. There's significant corruption, not in the United States. I'm talking about the rest of the world's experience with a single publicly owned system. I think local ownership is actually really important, and I think public ownership as a participant in the market rather than being 100% is probably pretty decent.
Hence the Institute for Local Self-Reliance.
I found myself at the right place. Yeah.
I just want to make sure we understand the marching orders. Okay.
What a start to 2025. Let's do one more thing, which is New York City has announced neighborhood internet. I wanted to make sure we talked about this because I named Mayor Adams as the worst person of 2024. And now he just announced this thing, which is actually through the New York Public Library, which I think has nothing to do with Mayor Adams, except he allowed them to do it and didn't stop it. But the public library,
you're just saving face here. You're just saying.
I think he heard. I think he heard about you, and this is the action that he took.
He's one of our one viewers, Doug. Is that what you're saying?
Yes. He could be McTaker. But you don't.
As the show ended, someone ran breathless into Mayor Adams' office and said, "Christopher Mitchell has a criticism of you."
Fix it.
The library is focused on a program in which, the library has long been doing CBRS, but now they are doing something which I believe is, I'm going to perhaps correct this in the next show, but I believe they're doing the sort of rooftop to rooftop and then using wireline facilities, using lines within the building to connect individual units. They're looking at 2,000 units to be able to deliver free internet service. I think public libraries being involved is great. Not necessarily every one of them, but there's some public libraries that would be very good at being a nonprofit ISP.
I agree, but that's just the vast majority of libraries have major funding problems. So there's not many who could do. This is the problem.
Yeah.
Libraries are
Or-
always the last one on the list for getting their funding. So yeah.
Or do they have the expertise to run an ISP? I think is a thing too.
Yeah.
If only they had some books they could read up on it.
And good luck when it snows. We're getting rid of all of our rooftop to rooftop connections in 2025.
Really?
I'm officially done with it. Yeah, people
Yeah,
are not patient anymore when there is a 10-second outage of their internet.
And,
So-
and when your thing gets snowed in, it goes off completely. And that's exactly
yeah.
right.
So yeah,
I mean,
good luck there in New York.
There's not many states where that still happens. Over the break, when I wasn't playing Borderlands 3, I was doing some reading about New York City and the Wright brothers. Two different books that happen to be set, nonfiction history type stuff in those places 100 years ago. And it is unbelievable to me how much the climate has already shifted. Just the temperatures that they were dealing with back then. They were regularly, there was like snow on the Outer Banks, Doug, when the Wright brothers were trying to like do their work out and just it is remarkable to me. And so there's not that many places in the United States where you would have enough snow to disrupt those signals, Travis, but you find yourself in one of them that does.
Yeah, and it does it quite often. So, maybe in the Woodrow Wilson administration they had more snow, but we still have plenty for point-to-point links to stop working.
Yeah, no,
You know
Kansas,
what?
I'm saying
Wait a
Kansas
minute.
City got it as go ahead, Doug.
1 hour and 11 minutes to get our first Woodrow Wilson of the year. This is
Yeah, I mean, I just want to make sure. Yeah, and when customers on support, and you go, well, back in the Wilson administration, we would have been worse. That's not really the answer they want to hear.
We're going to wrap on this because I read this and I have not verified it, or I actually heard it on a show. And I thought of you immediately, Travis, but I haven't had a chance to tell you. Woodrow Wilson was reelected, and apparently his vote share in New Jersey was abnormally low from what was expected. And so statisticians were trying to figure out why he lost support unexpectedly in New Jersey. He still had enough to win, I guess, but not as much as they would have expected. And the best correlation was that there had been a unexpected rise of shark attacks that were heavily in the media. And they found that people lost support for the governing party when there was a lot of shark attacks in the media. It gives you a sense of how the people who determine elections often vote because basically they were like, my life is worse because there are shark attacks. I want someone else in power.
We started this on deportation and we're ending it on shark attacks. Is that what we're doing on Connected?
Well,
The wild world that we live in.
The next episode is going to be our Shark Week show, just so you know.
Yeah. I hope people are not expecting more of this because I'm about out of random things to say. So it might be a more normal show in 2 weeks. So
we get a little nutty when we make predictions. Let's face it. So.
I'm excited to be back with you all. I think this was a good. I think we got some great predictions. It's going to be interesting to watch what happens. I did not have on my dance card that Project Kuiper would be locking down states with some of the states contracting with them for the higher cost areas. So it's going to be an interesting year.
Kuiper says he's going to have customers before the end of the year, so I guess they're going to get those birds up in the air.
Yeah. All right.
How many do they have up right now?
2.
Okay, we should do a future show because their full constellation is much smaller than Starlink. I assume they're in higher
3,200. They're much bigger satellites. They're big hogger things. They're more like floating data centers.
They must be higher up to avoid the horizon problem then, no?
No, a little higher, but just like 100 miles. Yeah.
That's
still
like 30% higher then.
yeah, they're higher. Yes, but they're also much bigger. So.
All right, so I have a prediction. So Mitchell uses a Google phone, our only green texter. He listens to his Zune for his music, and now he's going to be a Project Kuiper internet user. He's always on the weird stuff, right?
As soon as they announce a car, I'm going to put a deposit on.
Yeah. Oh, but I would like to congratulate Forward Motor Company on selling their one Ford Lightning this year. Well done, Mr. Mitchell.
It's a lease. It's really nice. I think the Ford Lightning's doing pretty well. So,
how's the heat here? What's your range in Minnesota?
It's so we got because we're leasing it, we don't drive that much. I mean, for my business, which is where primarily our second car would usually be used the most for. We're talking about like a few thousand miles a year at most. So we started off in the garage at like 197, 196 mile range, and 2 miles later it's 190. But I would say that, like, if I'm trying to get down to a barbecue restaurant and back, John Hardy's, remember that, Travis? We did that in your Tesla. I'm going to be charging it to go there and back for sure. I need to charge it halfway.
Is there any reason you don't use the public transport, Mr. Mitchell? You feel?
What makes you think I don't use public transport? I use all kinds of transport.
Oh, okay. I just want to make sure. Yeah.
You're just poking the bear, Travis. You're just poking that bear.
I mean, there's no public buses that run to Travis's front door, so I will be driving the Lightning over.
I mean, Mitchell shows up with his fancy hairdo. I figured we had to prod him a little bit. But I do have an amazing barbecue spot to take you. So when you have time.
All right.
Let's
well,
go.
My truck will fit a pinball machine now. So just figure out which one you want to give me as a token of our friendship. And
Yes. Is that a tax I have to pay now?
No, it won't be a tax. I'm just going to write a law that you have to do it.
Yeah. I mean, I'm used to paying taxes. So if that's another one, just bring it on. Right.
All right. Thank you all for making it this far. It's been a fun start to the year. We look forward to more of these shows. Love the energy in the comments, and we'll look forward to seeing you all in about 2 weeks or so. Until then, it's been a fun episode of Connect This.